Welcome to MMA Fancast. My name is Luke Payson. Welcome back for everyone who is already a subscriber to the channel. If you're not already a subscriber, please subscribe so you can see more great interviews, including the one coming at you right now. Did a second round submission finish in his Brawl in the Burgh 25 fight for 247 Fighting Championships is your favorite lunatic, Drew the Lunatic Landefeld. Drew, aka the Lunatic. Welcome back to the show and Merry Christmas to you.
Merry Christmas to you, Luke. Thank you so much for having me back on, man. It's always an honor to be on your show, dude.
It's always great having you on the show. I would like to call you Almost Mystic Mac. For people that haven't watched it, go back and watch the interview that you did on the show just before your fight versus your opponent for Saturday. And you had predicted a second round TKO, and you gave us a second round submission guillotine finish. So first off, let's get right to it. Why not the knockout in the second round? Why the guillotine? And then we'll jump into the fight, of course.
He was doing a lot better job of keeping. I couldn't get a lot of separation. So even though I landed some big ground and pound shots with my right hand, I remember I landed three really good ones on him. He was doing a good job of grabbing me and keeping me tight. So I couldn't get a lot of separation. So I couldn't get that ground and pound. And when I realized I couldn't get the ground and pound off as much as I wanted, I kind of baited him to let him come up into a wrestling transition to make him feel comfortable that he was going to be on top. He would have got on top of me, but I was able to slip my left leg onto his inside his left leg so I could reposition for the guillotine because it actually wasn't a great setup. So the way I had it, he could have got on top of me if I wasn't able to trap my left leg inside his left leg to actually re-tight it and actually make it tight to kind of twist him and actually get that crank on it with his neck.
That makes sense because it was a very unique position and kind of a unique setup. Kind of give us a little history where, I mean, your nickname's the Lunatic. You tend to fight bloody like the Diaz brothers, although you didn't really get any of that in this fight. And of course, Maximilian Jarrell is a very talented fighter and had some moments, like you said, that you had to adjust. But where do you get your either wrestling or jujitsu, and how comfortable are you kind of entering in? Most people use guillotines defensive for takedowns, where for you, it sounds like you used it offensively, like you gave him an opportunity and then you kind of set your legs up and all that. So kind of talk about your jujitsu wrestling style.
So I was a pretty solid wrestler my whole life. I've wrestled since I've been in kindergarten, so I have a little good feel for hips, where my weight needs to be, where my opponent needs to weight needs to be for certain things like that. I didn't do as good as in my wrestling career as I wanted, so I think I can show that in MMA because I'm a really good wrestler, and a lot of guys in MMA are really good wrestlers, and that's what actually got me into it, having that wrestling background. I just think you have such an advantage over, good people. Even if you're even in this, you're going to be, if you're better at wrestling, you have such an advantage now. So I love using my MMA wrestling because it's different than scoring points, because I can now choke people out and stuff. So it's just so much cooler, I think. But I'm always going to love wrestling. But now that I can choke people and stuff like that, and then punch them in the face as well, too, because I've done some grappling matches where it's harder just when you're grappling, where you can't set stuff up with some punches. So I'm setting stuff up with punches, and then it opens stuff more, grappling up more. So even like I forget what it's called, like the combat grappling or whatever. Chris
Yeah.
Dempsey did it. That would be pretty cool. I do that too. Just opens more submissions up when you can get punched or slapped in the face. Just doesn't let you sit there. It makes you work. So
Yeah,
I just
and
love
the
that
slapping
about
in the
MMA.
face, for the combat wrestling, I like to call it palm strikes because realistically, the slap sounds like it's not a big deal, but it is. Of course, now Dana White's doing the power slap, and so obviously it makes a difference. But yeah, I know Chris Dempsey's done the combat wrestling, and of course, for most people, that's either people that are already MMA, like you would be or Chris Dempsey are. But for a lot of people, I would say maybe the majority, it's people that are very good jujitsu grapplers that want to kind of maybe build themselves up to see, what they can do. So that obviously would be pretty good stuff. 247 Fighting Championships, and I know no behind the scenes on this, but I know that with them starting the sunny day arena at the venue, kicking it off February 1st. I would imagine you'll want to be on that card. I know that they're going to be doing quite a few more variety, both MMA, but also maybe kickboxing, boxing, Muay Thai, obviously more sprawl in the Burghs, and who knows? I don't know what the commissioner does because we're governed by Commonwealth of Pennsylvania commissioner. I'm not sure if they allow the combat wrestling, but there's obviously or combat grappling, but there's obviously a lot of different things that 247 might be doing. For you, what was the confidence level? Some people kind of give their submissions percentages. When you were setting this up against Maximilian and you got your legs entangled and you started going for the guillotine, were you like 100% sure this was going to finish it, or was it kind of like 70%? You just kind of wanted to see what would happen?
I was like 30% on it, but I knew I was going to get a sweep out of it if I didn't get the guillotine. I was going to go for it. He was going to end up on top, but I was going to go my leg inside like I did. That's how I readjusted to get it tighter. As you can see, that's how I ended up on top with the mount. That's kind of what I was going to try to go with it. If I didn't get the choke, you kind of use it to sweep then.
Makes sense.
So, yeah, so that was, I honestly wasn't that, tight, like, especially with the gloves and stuff too, at the chokes and everything, right? It makes it so much tougher when you're grabbing on the gloves and stuff like that. But I was able to get it under his chin, and I think he ended up going out eventually.
Well, and I think yeah, and obviously we wish him the best in recovery. He's got a bright future, and it's pretty rare to have Pittsburgh versus Pittsburgh, or hometown versus hometown. You get a lot more eyes on the fight that way, and it was a very well received fight from the walkouts and everything. But I always like to use MMA Fancast to kind of help people that are maybe early in their career, so or maybe haven't been in all the situations you have. You now have a 4-3 record at an amateur level, which is a very experienced amateur. So just take it from the Lunatic that you know getting in on a submission that you think is about 30% of the way there. One, it doesn't have to get the submission, is what you were saying. You could have used it for something else. I think one of the early mistakes, particularly in jiu-jitsu or MMA, is hesitancy to try for something, because we see some stalemates sometimes in MMA, and that's part of the process. If somebody's learning MMA and they kind of stalemate, it's because they don't want to make a mistake, and that's understandable. But you have to your point, you got in on something that you thought was about 30% of the way there, ended up finishing in, but even if it didn't, you were going to use it to advance your position. So great stuff. And I think that confidence goes a long way. One of the things that I guess isn't at like the catch wrestling mindset, where people would try to chain submissions together, and it's less about trying to get one, it's more about 3, 4, 5 moves down the road. Is that something you like to do in MMA and jiu-jitsu?
Yeah, I think that's what's growing me in my amateur, because like you said, sometimes you go pro after 3 or 4 fights just going 4-0. But to be honest, like, those losses were actually a blessing, because it made me switch up some stuff in my training camp, and it made me grow. Winning is awesome. It really is, but I've grown every time more from a loss than a
Mhm.
win. So I just have to remember that. I'm happy that I won, but I just really need to get back in the gym and do it again. That's like, I did it against a tough opponent, a rising star, everyone says. So I want to go against Alex Rios. He has the belt. I really want to show that I can grapple, I can strike, and I'm well rounded, and I deserve it.
Wow. Well, there you go. So what do you think your matchup would be like if you do get, and obviously you fought a ton, I think only for 247. You might have one or two outside, but I know you're like a 247 guy. And obviously we got great matchmakers, the 247 crew, Hunter Homostack and Ryan Middleton. The fact that they're pulling off having their own venue is just going to be nuts. I can't wait to see what they do with that. But make the case a little bit more, like how do you see this playing out if you get the title shot? And then obviously I know sometimes they tend to like title eliminators. And so what do you think would happen if you end up getting a tough guy who's maybe not the champ, but somebody who is kind of then a path to the belt?
That's fine too. I'm just kind of looking to go pro, and you
Oh,
need to make sure you're taking the toughest fights to
mm,
do that. So, like, a belt, everyone just thinks you're ready to go pro when you win a belt, and that's honestly not even the case. You kind of know when you're ready by taking enough fights and stuff like that. So I think if I beat another tough guy and obviously get a finish, I'm finished. I'm not just winning, I'm finishing these guys
mm.
too. Every every single fight. If I finish it again, that would be my third finish in a row against three tough guys. Timbo was tough. He won submission of the year, and then I submitted him. No one likes to talk about that, but that's facts right there. Max is super tough. Rules with Lucas Siebert, 3-0 pro. So many tough guys at Stout. If I'm able to get a submission over him, I think I'm showing that I'm ready for that next level.
Well, you certainly are, and it's exciting to kind of see your mindset. Your nickname, and I love it. It works very well for your personality, the Lunatic. It doesn't mean you're not thoughtful. I think sometimes the guys that, I mean, you are very willing to fight through pain. We'll talk about that in a little bit because of your lower calf kick stuff. I mean, you definitely had some damage there. We'll talk about that. But I think it's also great. It's also great that you show the mindset. Clearly, I'll talk about the fact that you submitted Timbo. Timbo's a great fighter, got submission of the year. Then you submitted him. Obviously, anybody that comes out of Stout is known to have good jiu-jitsu, and you went after a good jiu-jitsu camp and all that. But talk a little bit about those low kicks before you got the stoppage. And I got to see him. I got to see your leg up close and personal when I was interviewing you. And you had about a section maybe this big, 6-7 inches that looked beat up. So what did that feel like in there? What does it feel like now?
They hurt. And when you have the adrenaline rushing, luckily, even though I got dropped from one of them, I wouldn't have quit. He could have kicked me in the leg 100 more times. It wouldn't have changed anything. That's why they call me the Lunatic. Because when I'm in there, like you said, I'm a nice, thoughtful guy. But when I'm in there, that cage door closes. I'm not nice. It's nice and thoughtful. Like, I'm here to do damage to you. I know you're here to do damage to me. Like, that's me and him were talking trash the whole time. That made it even more fun. We were talking. I was like, come on, dude, come on. Like, I just remember, and I forget, like, I thought I did something like maybe illegal, like hit him on a low blow or something. So I stopped. He's like, no, man, I was just talking shit. So it was cool. Max was a cool kid. I really respect him for taking that fight. Not everyone would take a fight against an experienced guy like me. So the fact that he did it after a loss even shows more uh, balls from him and just more respect from him. Those low kicks, like I said, in there, they hurt, but it wouldn't have got me out of the fight. He would have had to kick me 1,000. It wouldn't, no matter how many kicks he me with my adrenaline running, I'm not going to stop. But after that, once the adrenaline stops, that's when the pain happens. You know what I mean? It's like, I remember this is also why I'm the Lunatic. I was outside of the cage hitting it as hard as I can in front of the doctor because I was just trying to show him it didn't hurt at the time because I don't feel pain at that time. So, yeah. Don't recommend it. Don't recommend it. Not proud of it, but that did happen. So that's probably where I get my nickname from when I don't think about it.
Of course, of course. Well, and obviously we want you to recover. Are there any concerns with that, or is it just basically going to heal up on its own?
Oh, it's fine. I'm already walking around, ready to boom, boom, ready to go, baby. I'm ready to move and let's go.
You're a pleasure to have on the show. I always appreciate you coming on. I think you've made a great case for your next opponent, your next fight, and you do have a point. A belt always feels good if you get an amateur belt before you go pro. But to your point, taking the right fights, beating good opponents is what's going to matter more at the pro
Yeah.
level. So can't wait to see what's next. Your face lit up when I said you're probably going to want to fight on the February 1st card. So hopefully one of the matchmakers from 247 is listening to this and can get you matched up for whatever fight is going to be best for that February 1st card. And that's going to be a huge card. I know a lot of people are going to want to get on that because of what it means to 247.
Yeah. And there's some other tough guys that had good wins too. So if it's not, sometimes just fights don't work out at the right time. So like I said, you said if I don't get the title shot, hopefully just another hard fight opens up that is going to advance me to my pro debut. Hopefully mid this year is my goal. Mid
Well, it's always
2020
great.
pro debut.
Okay. You want pro debut mid 2025. And
I
that
know
would
I'll
give
be
you
ready by then.
what?
I know I'll be ready by then.
And then you'll be ready by
100%.
it. Wow, that's great. Plus, if you are able, and plans are sometimes tricky, but if you are able to get your pro debut mid, that allows you to maybe get even a couple pro fights in 2025 if you've already
Yep.
gotten your debut out of the way. You mentioned, so we'll just bring it up kind of as a nice way to close. I I'm sure at some point on Facebook, 247 will be announcing their awards. The 247 yearly awards are a big deal. You mentioned beating one of the award winners before. You just beat a fighter out of the two-time Gym of the Year and the two-time Coaches of the Year out of Stout. It's very high rated. And I love looking through. I love going down memory lane because a year is always full of exciting fights. The categories I think are always great, from the coaches to the fighters to the gyms. So people need to be looking for that. It usually gets thousands and thousands of votes. I know sometimes people think, "Oh, what's the big deal?" I think it's a big deal. You and many others, myself included, we know it's a big deal. So whenever that comes out, be looking for that. And then, of course, the 247 at least is going to have an incredible 2025 with the first year with their full venue. I know they have a lot planned there. Can't wait to see what you have in 2025. Obviously, it's been an honor to follow you so far, and I can't wait to continue to follow you. You know, whatever your next amateur fight is, and then if you are able to go pro, whatever your pro career brings. So, really, really appreciate you coming on. As always, my name's Luke Basin from MMA Fancast. Merry Christmas to everybody and a Happy New Year. I think officially I can say that Drew, the Lunatic Landefeld, will be my last interview before Christmas. We do have a couple interviews scheduled for after Christmas, but he's my last one. I'm not doing one, obviously, on Christmas Eve or Christmas. So everybody have a safe and happy holiday focused on Jesus being the reason for the season. I really appreciate you coming on the show. Luke Basin from MMA Fancast with the one, the only, Drew, the Lunatic Landefeld. Thanks so much for coming on the
Luke,
show.
Merry Christmas. Thank
Merry
you. Merry
Christmas,
Christmas.
buddy. Congrats
Thank you,
again.
dude.